Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. This week is definitely kind of a tense and intense week. I'm very glad that yesterday was peaceful and fairly quiet here in Washington, D.C., and across the nation, and I really hope we can maintain that kind of peace over the next few days. There are armed guards all over the Capitol building and across the city in general, and that's pretty disturbing. I'm not questioning that it's necessary right now. But I also am not sure how we'll know when it's safe to step down from such a serious military presence. But today is Martin Luther King Day. The day honors his leadership during the civil rights movement, and during this particular week, the part of that leadership I'm thinking about most is his insistence that deep social change and the quest for justice can be made via nonviolence. Nonviolence does not mean one is passive, and does not mean that one is powerless, even in the face of armed resistance. I'll be thinking about those particular ideas and arguments of his over the course of the day. For this video today, I have a lot of random little bits to share. Let me start by reading you a poem, something my spouse David found on Facebook, I think, and sent to me. It's a mashup of one of the best-known poems of William Carlos Williams and Beowulf. This is just to say, I have eaten the Danes that were in your mead hall, in which you were probably leading for Hrothgar. Forgive me, they were delicious, so drunk and so cold. I have a folder somewhere, although who knows where, full of various takeoffs on Williams' poem. If I can find it, I'll definitely share some more. My second bit of random bookishness is a little different. Years ago, I was more active on Twitter than I am now. And although I spent a lot of my time back then tweeting about knitting and yarn, I did make a bunch of bookish friends as well. And I'm thrilled to still be Twitter friends, at least technically. I actually met a handful of them in person at a very special tea party once, and it was just lovely. Anyway, one of these bookish Twitter folks, who does not live in the DC area and who I have not met in real life, offered to send out real handwritten letters to any folks who wanted to get a personalized book recommendation from him. I threw in my name, telling him I had just read for the first time and absolutely loved George Eliot's Middlemarch. Could he recommend something like a 20th century version of Middlemarch? Well, it took a bit of time to receive, partly because he was busy, and partly because of the craziness of the mail system here recently. I had forgotten about the request, honestly, until I opened his wonderfully charming letter. He suggested two possibilities. One which he thought was fairly safe, as he said, or at least perhaps more expected. That one was D.H. Lawrence's Women in Love, published in 1920. I've only read one Lawrence book, and it wasn't this one, but I liked my friend's reasoning. Take two couples and set them against each other, considering how the contrast illuminates both the people and their relationships, and join together fiction and philosophical thinking at the same time. Apparently, D.H. Lawrence was quite aware that his work grew out of Eliot's in some way. The second book he recommended as a 20th century Middlemarch did surprise me, mostly because the setting is so radically different, and that is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, primarily because it is a tale about a cast of interconnected characters who are forced to think about what community means. I would love to hear what some of y'all think about this comparison. I've not read Lonesome Dove, and when I mentioned that fairly recently in some video or other, so many of you chimed in saying you loved it and highly recommended it. If I'm remembering correctly, many of you who love Lonesome Dove also loved Middlemarch. Tell me what you think of this connection down in the comments. Speaking of Middlemarch makes me think of Kim at Middle of the Book March. She's involved in a year of reading writings by and about George Eliot, and I'm really hoping to join her this month and squeeze in Gertrude Himmelfarb's slim study, The Jewish Odyssey of George Eliot. I've bitten off another big project, which I might talk about a bit next week, but especially after hearing how much Alba at Seriella loved the book, I'm definitely interested. I'm also reading one chapter a week of Michael Schmidt's The Novel, a biography, along with Amy from the Dusty Bookshelf and Sean D. Standfast. I won't be talking about it today, but I'll check in about the first several chapters, perhaps in my next Reads and Rambles video. I've recently read biographies or biography-like studies of Charles Dickens and William Shakespeare, and I wrote formal reviews of both for the online journal Open Letters Review. I think I want to talk a bit about them here, too, maybe later this week, specifically about what these two books have to say to each other. Interestingly, right now I'm right in the middle of two other literary biographies that seem to be speaking to each other. One, a study of Graham Greene, and the other, the amazing and amazingly long biography of Sylvia Plath. After I've gotten a little further along, I think I might want to do a joint discussion of each of these two sets of books as well. I'm always unsure if I subconsciously choose to read books back to back which fit together so well, or if I just shoehorn together whatever books I read at the same time. In other words, is there really something similar about these books? Something I would have compared anyway? Or do I just find things to compare in the books because they're both in my head at the same time? If I'd read in a different order, would I be thinking about comparing Charles Dickens and Graham Greene in one video, and William Shakespeare and Sylvia Plath in another? Of course, now I kind of want to figure out if that would be possible. Well, I want to talk about two more random things, both related either to books or to BookTube. Late Saturday afternoon, my husband and I popped a bowl of popcorn and sprinkled it with nutritional yeast, something that might not sound appealing to you if you haven't tried it, but is nevertheless a perfect combination. And then we planned to watch something together. Our plan was to watch a DVD we had just picked up from the public library, but despite a search, we could not find our little DVD disk drive to plug into my computer so we could watch. We now know where it is. Our son had used it for something recently. But since we did not know at the time, David and I decided to follow a recommendation from Brian at Bookish, a British show on Amazon called Travels by Narrowboat. It's a strange little show, led by a somewhat prickly man who is at the same time charming and perhaps too publicly forthcoming about his flaws, even when he's also overconfident. The show definitely has the kind of informal and intimate feel of a YouTube vlog sometimes, and the scenes of the water are peaceful and just lovely. The fact that the boater has to have a cup of tea multiple times a day as he steers his boat down the canal made both me and my husband think about a series of books we didn't grow up with but read with our son, the Swallows in Amazon series by Arthur Ransom. Unlike the children in those books, the man does not seem to be eating a lot of great food. The packaged food he acquires in the first couple of episodes is different from the packaged food in the U.S., but it sounds almost equally unappealing. One day, he made his own lunch, and I think I want to copy his meal, a cheese and onion sandwich. I'd really love to hear from some of you Brits. How do you make cheese and onion sandwiches? A slice of cheese and a slice of raw onion between two slices of bread? A mix of grated cheese and diced onion blended together with mayonnaise. As a kid, I loved pimento cheese, which was kind of shredded cheese and mild pepper blended like that. Or perhaps you toast the bread, or grill the onion, or perhaps grill the whole sandwich. And do any of you add anything else? Pickles, maybe, or lettuce, or whatever. Tell me your favorite style, and I'll try out a few. Although, sadly, I will have to be eating it on dry land. And, finally, yesterday. Although there were rumors flying around that there might be election-related violence, or at least armed protest all across the country, there was really almost nothing going on at all. so we were able to follow our usual Sunday morning routine. My husband made waffles, and I topped mine with some delicious but very out of season blueberries, while our son made us cups of espresso with foamed milk. And then we spent a bit of time with the New York Times. My favorite section, not surprisingly, is the book review. And this week, the piece that most fascinated me was an essay by S. Kirk Walsh about hearing the words on the page. Many of you know Steve Donahue's argument that we could read so much more, so much faster, if we stopped subvocalizing. That is, saying words we read aloud to ourselves silently without moving our lips, but nevertheless hearing the words in our head as we go along. I've said that I didn't subvocalize at all until I went to college and started reading poetry. Now, I sometimes subvocalize, and I sometimes don't, mostly depending on what I'm reading. In Walsh's article, he writes, "When I read to myself, I couldn't hear my own voice. For me, the act of reading was like sitting alone in a silent room. Static strings of words created meaning, character, and story, but I couldn't hear their cadences and rhythms." The author attributes his own lack of subvocalization partly to potential hearing loss resulting from numerous childhood ear infections. Interestingly, another bodily ailment, along with a graduate writing teacher, taught him to be able to listen to books. A rollerblading accident led to a severely broken shoulder that meant he absorbed literature not by reading and writing about it, but by listening and talking about it. And it was the work of Virginia Woolf that really broke him open. As I read The Waves, I started to hear language as if for the first time. It was as though a window flew open and the sounds of the author's words rushed in. I began to notice the sonic patterns of Woolf's sentences, how she composed a music all her own with her rhythmic language and sentence structure. This discussion really resonates with the response that Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse had to Virginia Woolf this week, and also with the musicality that Luke Hosh at Cruel Reader's Thesis talked about in his video this morning. I'll link to both of their videos below, and I'm really looking forward to their further conversations about Virginia Woolf. Anyway, Walsh suggested that his new ability to hear language as he read was perhaps a kind of synesthesia almost. He could not write, so, as he says, this limitation might have opened up another cognitive pathway in my brain. Or maybe it was the fact that Woolf's novel is built with a kind of acoustic architecture. The sound of her sentences carry the narrative along. Woolf's slow lyricism and rhythm carry her theme of time. Walsh suggests that the interplay of sound and structure open up what he calls a new path of meaning for the reader. There's so much that fascinates me in this piece. Just the question of subvocalization is an interesting one that has fascinated me ever since Steve Donahue made me think about it more consciously. As a person who's always experienced a small degree of synesthesia, I'm intrigued by Walsh's link, although I don't think he goes into any detail about what I personally experience. The idea of tying the issue of hearing loss also really draws me, since I'm deaf in one ear and spent much of my academic life thinking about the meanings of hearing loss and deafness. And interestingly, I have a friend whose debut novel is coming out this spring, whom I hear is also coming out with an essay about sound and fiction. I can't wait to read it. Well, that will be it for today. This Reads and Rambles is even more random and disconnected than usual. But thanks for joining me. See you soon here on Hannah's Books.